Uhuru, everyone. All right. Let me know if you can hear me. I want to make sure everything is all swell. All right, Uhuru. Uhuru to everyone who's watching. We have Renee from Philly. Renee and Joe, salute Uhuru already. And I know other people are joining us. So, my name is Jackson. I am a very proud member of the Uhuru Solidarity Movement. It is my honor to lead these these reparations study groups, formerly known as the Solidarity Spear Study. But we are the Reparations Study Group, and this is episode 5, Victory to Iran and Victory through the Black Community. So we did have a different study schedule, but in lieu of recent events, we want to really tackle this question. And we have a very powerful article from Chairman Omali Yeshitela of the Afghan People's Socialist Party that we will be studying today. And I am very honored to have as our guest our National Chair, Jesse Nevel. So salute Chair Jesse. I'm going to bring up a photo of you here. Here we are. Uhuru, Chair Jesse. Can you hear me? Awesome.
Uhuru Jackson.
Wonderful. So this is the Reparations Study Group where we study the Burning Spear newspaper and other publications of the Afghan People's Socialist Party and the Uhuru movement. If you're not familiar with us, Uhuru means freedom in Swahili, and the Uhuru Solidarity Movement is the solidarity organization of majority white people under the leadership of the Afghan People's Socialist Party, and we organize in the white community for reparations. And in fact, I and 3 of my comrades here in St. Petersburg, Florida, were just at a No to War in Iran rally where we were putting forth solidarity with the people of Iran and solidarity with the black community, and how we cannot condemn U.S. invasion of abroad without also condemning the U.S. invasion of the black community, of the Mexican community, and other locally colonized areas as well, and that it's all one and the same in terms of the anti-colonial struggle, and that reparations puts us directly in solidarity with all oppressed people. So we'll be going more into that in this study. But I just wanted to lay out, who we are, what we do. Our 3 principles of unity are that we are under the leadership of the Afghan People's Socialist Party, and that we recognize Afghan people have the right to lead their own struggle, and that we organize in the white community for reparations. So today we'll be reading an article that is on the Burning Spear website, but I also want to introduce everyone to the Burning Spear newspaper here in my hands, a new January issue. And we study the Burning Spear newspaper and the other publications of the party because they are from the perspective of the black working class. They are, they show the world as it really is, while the bourgeois media, is white power media and is the real fake news. This is, from the eyes of oppressed peoples, of the Afghan working class, about the conditions and the struggles that they experience under colonialism and their fight for liberation that is, leading the way for liberation for all peoples from this terrible social system. So, and it has the 14-point platform of the Afghan People's Socialist Party in every issue, and we sell it in the Uhuru Solidarity Movement in the white community to, educate ourselves and our communities about how we can be in solidarity with Afghan and all oppressed peoples. And I encourage everyone to get your Burning Spear newspaper, if you have not already, at burningspearmarketplace.com, and to check out there the other publications of the Uhuru movement as well. So I think that we can dive into our study. I want to appreciate again our National Chair, Jesse Nevel, for being on the study tonight as our guest. And Uhuru, Chair Jesse.
Uhuru Jackson, thank you. I want to appreciate you for hosting this extremely important weekly Reparations Study Group. And I just got on Wi-Fi, so I'm kind of fumbling to try to share this video on Facebook.
Yes.
And I want to encourage other people to do so as well. This is an extremely important discussion that we have every week on the question of reparations to African people and our responsibility as white people living on the pedestal of the oppression and exploitation of African people in building a movement for reparations and white solidarity with Black power. So this is a really important study, and I just want to join in saluting my leadership, Chairman Amalia Shatella, and the African People's Socialist Party, whose work, for nearly 50 years to build revolutionary organization that will provide the vehicle through which African working class people will be able to seize control of their resources and win freedom and self-determination over their own lives, has been made possible in large part due to the work that the chairman has done in developing a revolutionary philosophy that guides all of the work of the Uhuru movement that's called African internationalism. And as the title of the upcoming plenary conference of the African People's Socialist Party proclaims, the role of the vanguard party of the African working class is in bringing together theory and practice, that the theory of African internationalism, the understandings of the revolutionary party of the African working class are made real in the actual on-the-ground work that the party does to build dual and contending power, to build political and economic institutions, and to build the party, to build the African People's Socialist Party. And a front of that is the Solidarity Movement, extending the struggle for African liberation into the belly of the beast, into the living rooms and even the boardrooms of white power.
Yes.
So this is what we have to do. This is our task. And it is a liberating, empowering, and incredible thing to be a part of. So I just want to quickly also let you know the reason why you're staring at a picture of me and why I'm not there with Comrade Jackson as I would like to be, or as I usually am, is because I am in St. Louis, which I am also very happy to be here. I'm actually in the other headquarters of the African People's Socialist Party, the Midwestern city of African resistance. So very excited to be here and to be, working in the movement here and, seeing the Black Power Blueprint project across the street from the beautiful Uhuru House. I got to see the marketplace and outdoor venue space that's being built. And I know people have been following this project and seeing it online, but you haven't seen it until you see it in person. It's an incredible, incredible institution. And you got to start making plans to come to St. Louis for the Uhuru Solidarity Movement National Convention, April 18th and 19th. So just wanted to say that. I also want to salute Chairwoman Penny Hess, who I had the great honor and pleasure of being able to work with in person today here in St. Louis.
Mm-hmm.
And finally, I want to shout out USM St. Pete for recruiting 3 new members.
Yes.
And doing a great job representing the real anti-war stance, the real anti-imperialist stance for a white person, which is to go beyond just saying peace, peace in the Middle East or stop the wars or whatever, but to say victory to the Iranian people.
Yes.
And to say not only do we say victory to the Iranian people and death to U.S. imperialism,
yes.
we understand that empty sloganeering is not going to do it. That the way that we can show our commitment to the victory of the Iranian people is by recognizing that the colonial domination and war that's being meted out against the oppressed peoples of the world thousands of miles away has its foundation in the original scene of the crime, which is this very country that we are in right now. Yeah. The initial and ongoing attack and assault on African people and Mexican people and indigenous people, where the template by which all counterinsurgency around the world has been modeled was honed and crafted right here inside U.S. borders against the internally, domestically colonized African nation and other oppressed nations. So the work for reparations is a strike at the jugular of white power and imperialism that is shedding the blood of human beings all over the planet Earth. So anyway, last thing I wanted to say for this extended overview here is that this article that we're going to read is very important. This is from Chairman Omali Shatella's Omali Taught Me study on January 5th.
Yes.
And for anyone who doesn't know, pardon my cough, for anyone who doesn't know, the article and the statement from the chairman is a response to the assassination last Wednesday of of several people, actually, including Iraqi leaders, but chiefly among them was an Iranian general. He's actually the commander of the Al-Quds Force, which is the international wing of the Iranian Revolutionary Guard. And his name was Qasem Soleimani, and he was, as the chairman sums up, a very important figure in the struggle of the Iranian people against various forces in the region that have worked, in some cases in collusion with the United States to try to undermine Iran's influence and the independence of the Iranian people. And I just wanted to kind of give an update that since this was written, since the chairman put out this statement, things have been developing in that region at a breakneck speed. And shortly after the assassination of Soleimani, the government of Iran launched airstrikes against U.S. bases in Iraq, where there were actually no casualties. There were no troops stationed in those, or no, armed forces stationed in those bases at the time that they were attacked. And then hours after Iran launched those missiles, a Ukrainian airplane crashed in Tehran, which is the capital of Iran. And over almost 200 people died, and most of them were Iranian. And it seems extremely obvious that the United States, the CIA, some entity of U.S. imperialism, was behind that. And they openly attacked Iran by killing Soleimani, and then they covertly attacked Iran by downing a Ukrainian commercial airline filled with Iranian people and others hours after the Iranians launched a strike against U.S. bases in Iraq. But now, in a very bizarre, propaganda kind of twist of reality, what we're being told by the bourgeois media is that the Iranian government shot down that Ukrainian airplane. That makes absolutely no sense.
It makes no
and
sense.
The rule of thumb for U.S. imperialism is that if they tell you it's true, you should assume it's a lie.
Yeah.
So I assume that the United States brought down that plane, and that is just yet another act of brutal and desperate aggression by a U.S., a desperate U.S. imperialism against the people of Iran. So just wanted to say that, and I'll turn it back over to Comrade Jackson.
Uhuru, thank you, Jesse, for that introduction. I really want to unite with that, and it's so critical that we know what Chair Jesse just laid out about the current situation in terms of U.S. imperialism and U.S. attack on Iran and the Iranian people and the anti-colonial movement. And I want to make a self-criticism because I did not salute properly our leadership, Chairman Omali Yeshitela, who you can see in every Burning Spear newspaper. Here we are, front and center here on page 8. I want to salute Chairman Omali Yeshitela of the African People's Socialist Party and African Socialist International, whose article we are to read today that is copied from his Omali Taught Me Sunday study. That you can, participate in and hear, every Sunday, 8 a.m. Eastern at youtube.com/UhuruTV or facebook.com/omali.yeshitela. And I also want to salute Deputy Chair Onezene Yeshitela, who leads all of the economic work of the African People's Socialist Party, including the Black Power Blueprint, where all the reparations we raise go. And I want to salute Director Akile Anayi of Agitation and Propaganda of the African People's Socialist Party, who, in addition to other roles, is also the, as part of her role as director, is editor-in-chief of the Burning Spear newspaper and oversees the Burning Spear website as well. So I want to salute them before we go on to our article today. So thank you so much, Chair Jesse, for laying all that out, and salute your leadership of USM in extending the strategy of the African People's Socialist Party, their strategy for going into the belly of the beast and winning white people like ourselves to be on the right side of the question. It's African people reclaiming their resources in terms of reparations, but also winning soldiers to fight for African liberation, winning white people, and it's so exciting. to be a part of this movement and to extend that struggle and to have the opportunity to join on the right side of history, to be in genuine solidarity with the Iranian people and not just, give a few chants and that's it. And, it's real material solidarity that we can be in through this with Iranians, with African people, with all oppressed people. So I want to appreciate you, and I think we can go into our article today. So the link is in the comments on YouTube and Facebook. Oh, and I also want to appreciate Ron Hudson from Seattle who's tuning in. I want to appreciate Danielle Cannon who's tuning in, Danielle Lamb Cannon, Virginia Wilson, Casey Mackey from St. Louis, and I saw, let me see here, Paula Lipsy from Arizona, and I also saw our comrade James from the UK, so Uhuru. Uhuru Jesse?
Yes, Uhuru, I am here. Okay, so
Wonderful.
I can kick it off here.
All right.
All right, so it's not about Trump, the historical basis for the assassination of Iranian General Qasem Soleimani. What distinguished the murder of Qasem Soleimani by U.S. airstrike was not the fact that the U.S. would conduct a state-sanctioned assassination, which they have done many times, but that they openly acknowledged it. Soleimani was an important force in the Iranian government and a prominent leader of the Iranian military. He played a primary role in organizing the pushback to the Islamic State in the area characterized as the Levant, that includes Syria and Iraq. As a general, Soleimani led and developed militia forces, including inside Iraq. What the U.S. and other bourgeois media are claiming is that he organized militias of murderers and terrorists. But the militias that he created were at one point appreciated by the U.S. government because they became integrated with the military strategy of the Iraqi Defense Forces combating the Islamic State, which the U.S. was also targeting. Targeted assassination by the U.S. is not unusual, but the rare open acknowledgement by the U.S. government has elicited disappointment from some sectors of the bourgeoisie who have expressed tactical differences with the Trump administration's decision to kill Soleimani in such an open fashion. Nevertheless, they are all in agreement that Soleimani deserved to be killed. The Wall Street Journal published what they called a brief history of rising tensions in the Persian Gulf. It includes a summary of the U.S. withdrawing from the nuclear deal with Iran and imposing sanctions on the Iranian economy, attacking oil reserves in Iran by canceling waivers on other countries who were involved in trade with them. As the Wall Street Journal puts it, the tensions escalated when Iran shot down a U.S. drone on a spy mission in June of 2019. A month later, the U.S. shot down an Iranian drone alleged to have been spotted near a U.S. warship. Soon after, rockets were fired at an Iraqi base, killing an American contractor. Trump blamed Iran. Thousands of Iraqis rose up against the occupation in Baghdad, storming the U.S. embassy there. This is how the bourgeois Wall Street Journal is summing it up. But as usual, they don't say where all of this began. In 1953, the U.S. government overthrew the democratically elected prime minister of Iran, a man named Mohammad Mossadegh. At the time, the British were heavily involved in the Iranian oil industry, and the U.S. wanted to break up the Anglo monopoly on petroleum. Meanwhile, Mossadegh was moving to nationalize the Iranian oil. Under the British monopoly on their oil industry, the Iranians were only getting 16% of the value of their own oil. The U.S., using the CIA, went into Iran and staged a coup, overthrowing Mossadegh and installing a tyrannical puppet leader named Mohammad Reza Pahlavi, who was known as the Shah. The U.S. exercised influence throughout the region through its embassy in the Shah's Iran. This represented a key strategic geopolitical significance for U.S. imperialism and its access to the resources of the region. Nearly a third of the petroleum in that region has to pass through the Persian Gulf and the Strait of Hormuz. Therefore, Iran has the capacity to block the passage of huge amounts of oil. By installing the Shah in power, Iran became a military outpost for U.S. imperialism in the region. I'll read a little bit longer. Where was I? Okay. It was important as a military anchor in that area, as well as in North Africa. The U.S. put an array of sophisticated arms into the hands of the Shah. The African People's Socialist Party worked with Iranian students exiled in the U.S. during that time period. They were extremely active on campuses and elsewhere. When they demonstrated against the Shah's regime, they had to wear sacks over their heads to conceal their identities, because if their faces were photographed by the press and identified by the Savak, the neo-colonial Iranian intelligence organization shaped and influenced by the United States and Israel, their family members back in Iran would be tortured and often killed. The Shah was a horrible entity. People inside and outside of Iran have been struggling against the Shah forever, including at least 2 Marxist organizations, as well as many Islamic organizations. One of the most important Islamic forces was led from a leader in exile named Khomeini. Khomeini exerted tremendous ideological influence on the movement in Iran against the Shah. Cassette tapes of his speeches would be played in Islamic mosques in Iran, broadcasting his criticisms of the Shah. Crisis began to emerge inside Iran. Protests inside and outside the country forced the Shah out of power. Ayatollah Khomeini returned from exile as the Shah and the U.S. were being kicked out of Iran in 1979. After the Islamic Revolution of 1979, the new government was in possession of all of the military arms left over from the U.S. support of the Shah, weapons which were now in the hands of a fiercely anti-imperialist and anti-American regime. This is the context we have to understand. I'm going to turn it over to Jackson.
Uhuru. The targeted assassination of Soleimani cannot be attributed simply to the Trump administration. It's not a Trump thing. The U.S. has been making war against Iran for decades. This fact gets covered over by the bleeding hearts like the New York Times, who disagree with Trump's decisions but still maintain that Soleimani was a terrorist who will be mourned by none. This is, what they say. They call Soleimani a terrorist, while the U.S. government holds the entire world under nuclear threat and starves and quarantines peoples and nations everywhere. The U.S. has been involved in an ongoing process of trying to contain the influence of the Iranian government. They've been doing this since 1979, when they operated with the assumption that Iran had been weakened after the revolution. The U.S. manipulated and sparked a war between Iran and Iraq, playing both sides and providing coordinates to either military on the location of their supposed enemy. Over 800,000 people died in the Iraq-Iran war. The U.S. wanted to destroy Iran, where revolutionary fervor was alive, but they fought Saddam Hussein to a standstill. The U.S. was not concerned with Iraqis' losses because they wanted Iraq weak too. The U.S. wanted to be the hegemon in the region and would prefer to share power with nobody. This is the latest act of aggression in this long-standing war by the U.S. They've been kidnapping Iranian scientists. Iranian systems have been sabotaged. This is nothing new. The U.S. invaded Iraq in 2003. Iraq is a majority Shia country. The U.S. inflamed and manufactured tensions between Shia and Sunni Muslims. They created false tensions in Iran in an effort to turn the people against the government, just like they have tried to do in Syria. Then they portrayed a narrative where this false internal opposition in Iran was being suppressed by an unjust government. They wanted to create a Syria-type situation in Iran, but the Iranians crushed it. The whole of imperialism rests on the colonial oppression and exploitation of the world's peoples. It's not about Trump. The disagreements from liberal bourgeois elements with Trump's assassination of Soleimani have more to do with tactics. Our opposition is to the entire imperialist system and what it is doing in Iran and around the world. Objectively, the Iranian government disrupts the imperial project. In 1899, a white man in England named Rudyard Kipling, who was considered the, quote, bard of imperialism, end quote, wrote a poem entitled The White Man's Burden, which he wrote during the Spanish-American War. It was an ode to empire. The poem called on the Americans, who were at war in the Philippines, to adopt the burden of the white man, the burden of, quote, civilizing the savages, end quote, through colonialism and imperialism. Kipling urged on the Americans, despite the fact that colonizing the world was, as he put it, a, quote, thankless burden, one for which the colonized peoples would have no gratitude. This poem reflected a growing recognition in the white world of the United States as the rising imperial force. Theodore Roosevelt, considered by some to be the premier leader of the imperialist venture, and in parentheses, although we question this designation considering that the birth of the U.S. was the result of an imperialist venture, said that the poem made the point. It is no coincidence that it was Theodore's son, Kermit Roosevelt, who oversaw the coup in Iran in 1953. Wow. So, this again is from Chairman Omali Yeshitela. He spoke this at the Omali Taught Me Sunday Studies every Sunday at 8 a.m. And it is quite, he goes in depth. And before I turn it over to Chair Jesse, I want to thank some others who have joined us. And of course, I neglected to mention our incredible engineer, Kyle Weiss, who is here with us, Uhuru Kyle. And Kristen Forthen, who is in Spokane, Washington, and other comrades who I cannot see where they're from, but I salute you. And salute Maria as well, from Ohio. And I believe that is everything. So, Uhuru, Chair Jesse. Would you like to say something? Yeah, Uhuru.
Yeah, thank you. So, it's a very powerful article, and I think it's worth reading and rereading, honestly. Yes. Very, just really deep analysis from Chairman Omali Yeshitela. And I wanted to address a question that I saw in the comments from Virginia Wilson. And also, I think I saw Judy Robinson tune in. So, Judy, if you're still...
Oh, Uhuru, Judy.
If you're still watching, Uhuru, shout out to Judy Robinson. Glad you're joining us. Okay, so Virginia Wilson sent in a question that said, after the reading, can Jesse explain a bit more why it's not enough to say no war with Iran, but victory to Iran against U.S. imperialism and victory to the African working class and black community, and why that matters, and how reparations is actually a material stand against imperialism. And then how APSP, leading the Uhuru movement, is actually building black power to take down U.S. imperialism and white power. All right, well, I think Virginia sort of provided the answer to that question within the question itself, but I think it's worth kind of expounding on as well. And I think that, it's really important to understand that, as Chairman Omali Yeshitela has shown, just to take it back to the beginning, that, the system that dominates the world today is parasitic capitalism. And, that's the world system. Like, capitalism exists as much in the United States as it does in Africa. It exists as much in a penthouse apartment in Manhattan as it does in a impoverished shanty town in occupied Azania with no electricity. Like that, those are the two, opposing but united realities that are the essence of parasitic capitalism. It's a social and economic system that was born from the enslavement of African people, transforming African human beings into the first commodities that were traded on Wall Street that were sold as chattel slavery, that were sold as property and forced to labor as, machines of production on plantations for hundreds of years for no pay, in order to build and to create what economists have described as the most rapid and expansive accumulation of wealth in human history, which was, the starting point of parasitic capitalism. And that, as the chairman says, capitalism was born as white power. Capitalism was born out of imperialism, out of empire. Capitalism was birthed from those ships that Columbus and his so-called explorers that were colonial rapists and mass murderers, sailing the quote-unquote ocean blue to colonize and commit genocide against the indigenous people throughout the so-called Americas, the Caribbean, and so forth. That is, it is from that reality of violence and terror that capitalism emerged. It is from the enslavement of African people and the subsequent, colonization of African people, both in Africa and within U.S. borders, that gave rise to the system of capitalism that enriched the entire white world. All strata of white society were enabled to have access to wealth and opportunity through the massive influx of wealth that was made available by the initial assault on Africa and looting of Africa's resources and exploitation of African human beings for their labor, for the value of their labor. So what's the point of what I'm saying here with regards to Iran? The point is, this is the social system that has ruled the planet Earth for centuries, and for the last 5 or 6 centuries at least. And that when we see the U.S. government lashing out against the peoples of Iran or against any other oppressed peoples around the world, we're looking at a social system that literally, we're looking at a country like the United States as an entity literally would not exist if not for the genocide of an entire continent of human beings and the enslavement of another continent of human beings. Like, that's the first time in human history that you can say that about a country. Like, you see that country over there? That country would not exist if it hadn't been for massive slavery of hundreds of millions of people and massive genocide of just as many. So this is the not just the starting point for this system that all of us are, living under today, but it's also the essential fuel that keeps the engine running, is the oppression of African people and the continued occupation of the indigenous people's land and the murder and containment of the indigenous people, whether it's on concentration camps or whether it's in so-called immigrant detention facilities where Spanish-speaking indigenous people from Mexico and other places are put under brutal conditions of colonial violence and oppression at the hands of the U.S. government. So the weak link, the Achilles heel of parasitic capitalism is the African working class oppressed within the borders of the United States, and all African working class and poor peasantry throughout the world, on the continent of Africa, in the Bahamas, and everywhere else, where the African People's Socialist Party is working to organize African people into a single, united African movement with one strategy, one organization, and one philosophy. So if you want to attack capitalism, if you want to attack the system that is giving hell, to the peoples of Iran and Iraq and Syria and Haiti and Congo and all these other places around the world, the place to do that is right here in the United States. Basically, as they said in the 60s, bring the war home. And we have a responsibility to do that. The African working class is fighting under the leadership of the African People's Socialist Party to bring down the violent, death-wielding system of parasitic capitalism from within and to build a new world, to build a socialist world in which all human beings can live. And we have a responsibility as members of the white oppressor nation population whose, ability to fuel our cars and ability to have money in our bank accounts is directly tied to the screaming anguish of Iraqi children huddled in darkness as their family members are being blown to smithereens by drone strikes just a few feet away. That there's a direct relationship between those two realities. And if that makes us sick to the core of our being, then the work is right here. Gaza is right here. Iraq is right here. It's in South St. Petersburg. It's in North St. Louis. And the African working class, as the Palestinian people, proclaimed during the heroic rebellions in Ferguson in 2014, that the Black Revolution leads the world. So this is not like choosing one group over another.
Yeah.
Actually, when we stand in solidarity with the African Revolution inside the U.S. and around the world, which the African People's Socialist Party, as the chairman says in this article, has always stood with the people of Iran, has always stood with all oppressed peoples around the world. And the only way we can do that is by joining under the leadership of the African People's Socialist Party. Otherwise, we're just being cosmopolitan leftists, spouting off at the mouth about solidarity this and solidarity that, meanwhile shirking our primary responsibility to the oppressed peoples upon whose backs our very existence is made possible, which is African people right here in this country who are suffering from the same conditions 10 minutes away from where we're sitting right now.
Yes.
So that's what it's about. And reparations to African people, just one last comment on that. Reparations to African people is the final showdown for U.S. imperialism. Like, that's the end. That's the end game. It's not about a payout. It's not about getting elected president, Marianne Williamson, and allotting, allocating like $5 billion or something to go towards social programs or something like that. That's not what the African People's Socialist Party is calling on us to do in the Uhuru Solidarity Movement. They're calling on us to build solidarity with the African liberation struggle, with the struggle of African people to truly and completely and irreversibly reclaim control of everything that belongs to them, to build genuine political and economic power in their own hands so that colonialism's influence over the lives of African people can be neutralized and ultimately destroyed once and for all. And that is the meaning of reparations. Reparations is a function of revolution. Reparations is a revolutionary demand, and it's a revolutionary act. And the work that we do as the Uhuru Solidarity Movement is revolutionary work by virtue of its relationship to the revolutionary strategy of the African People's Socialist Party. So it is literally true that if you stay up late tonight to bake cookies, and you take those cookies out to an outreach table tomorrow, and you sell those cookies to random white passersby to raise money for the African People's Socialist Party, you have done something more powerful and effective to stand in solidarity with the people of Iran than any number of demonstrations could possibly hope to achieve that are isolated from the strategy of the African Revolution.
Exactly.
Uhuru.
I really want to appreciate that, Chair Jesse, and just completely unite. And I want to encourage everyone watching that if you have not joined and become a member of the Uhuru Solidarity Movement, you have that opportunity tonight. And if you're watching this later as well, go to uhurusolidarity.org. Or if you're already a member or you would just like to donate, you can pay reparations today and, put, watching this study to reparations to African people and to standing in solidarity with Iranian people and all oppressed peoples. And I just want to unite, Chair Jesse, how it's really incredible how selling cookies, like you just said, or building a branch in your area, or bringing the Uhuru Solidarity Movement to your city to have an event there, to be a part of a tour, as we will be doing very shortly. You can host Chair Jesse or another member of the African People's Solidarity Committee or Uhuru Solidarity Movement in your city and have an event. And you can email info@uhurusolidarity.org for more information on that. If our moderator could put that into the comments, shout out to our moderator Johan from Clearwater, Florida. So that's info@uhurusolidarity.org. And building in your area, selling the Burning Spear newspaper and getting into businesses, everywhere, that's real material work. And
Uhuru Jackson.
Uhuru. Oh, sorry.
Uhuru.
Yes, Chair Jesse?
Yeah, I just wanted to ask you a question.
Yes.
just with regards to the last thing that I said about how, doing the work of reparations is a more impactful expression of anti-imperialist solidarity with the peoples of the planet Earth than merely demonstrating. I want to clarify that doesn't mean we shouldn't demonstrate.
Yeah.
And, obviously, the Uhuru movement holds demonstrations. We should absolutely mobilize for the Black is Back Coalition's demonstrations,
yes.
which are actually, the Black is Back Coalition was formed as a criticism of the white-led anti-war movement, and it calls on white people to take a genuine anti-imperialist stance. But moreover, if there are demonstrations, even if they're white left, whatever peace demonstrations happening in your city, go to them.
Yes.
Print out our pamphlet. We'll email it to you. You can contact us, info@uhurusolidarity.org. Make some signs, go out there, take your burning spears, take your clipboards, and sign people up. We won 3 new members of the Uhuru Solidarity Movement, putting out the powerful line of the Uhuru movement and the chairman at the demonstration. So I wanted to ask you, Jackson, you were on the front lines earlier tonight. You came straight from the front lines to host this study.
There.
What was it like being out there? What kind of responses were you getting to what we were saying?
Well, obviously we have a lot of unity, and a lot of people really, starting to nod their heads and talking about how the movement for reparations and solidarity with Iran are not separate. You see, the wheels turning and them nodding their heads, saying yes, yes, and we got a lot of contacts, and sold the Burning Spear newspaper. And, there were some people there who were not either not ready yet to be a contact or to be a member, who still wanted to mull things over, and it can take time to disengage oneself from all of white power and its propaganda in our lives. While some people are ready right now to jump ahead, so we met multiple kinds of people in terms of the doors that they were at, and it's really good that we were out there, talking about reparations, raising reparations, and getting members who want to be involved in building the reparations movement here in St. Pete and all over. So it was
great.
Yeah, it was quite powerful. If you go to an event in your city, take a clipboard, take the pamphlet that Chair Jesse just mentioned, take the Burning Spear newspaper, and take photos. I am self-critical. We did not get photos of our 4 members out at this No War to Iran rally, but more photos of, work will be coming, from all sections of the Uhuru Solidarity Movement, I'm sure, and definitely from St. Pete, to show, the world and reach people online about what we're doing here on the ground. We have some comments, and I want to read them here. We have Virginia Wilson said thank you for answering her question, Chair Jesse. Let me see here. We have, scrolling, Danielle or Maria says, my burning spears are being mailed to them, and knows people in prison who will be reading them as well. So that is wonderful, in terms of getting the spear into people's hands, and people behind bars being able to see what's happening in the world and see that the Uhuru movement is fighting. And let me see here. Kristen Forthen says, salute Chairman Omali Yeshitela, victory to the African working class, white solidarity with Black power, material solidarity, not charity. Yes, so we are not a charity organization which throws crumbs and really does not do anything to overturn the system and why people are impoverished. They're forcibly impoverished. Their resources are stolen from them, and so charities just perpetuate the system, despite some people involved, being there for good intentions. Those people need the opportunity to come to the Uhuru Solidarity Movement so that their actions really do something to address at their root the conditions that they're seeing. And material solidarity, I think we summed that up pretty well. And Uhuru. So I just want to remind everyone to keep sharing this video. Message it to someone who you think would like to see this, to understand what's happening in Iran and throughout the world from the perspective of the African working class, from the perspective of the anti-colonial movement. This is not in the Wall Street Journal. This is not in the New York Times. This analysis, that this real history and summing up of what our social system of violence is committing around the world, and the resistance of oppressed peoples. And of course, if you have not already joined the Uhuru Solidarity Movement, or introduce someone to it, here we are, had the link on the screen right there at uhurusolidarity.org. You can also donate. And with the few minutes we have left, you can still call in. You can call the number that we have here so that we can hear your voice, and you can ask your question or comment voice to voice with us at 727-537-9171. That's 727-537-9171. And we also have a number of announcements of how we can, put solidarity in action and build the reparations movement and the Uhuru movement. But before we go into announcements, I want to turn it over to Cherjesi briefly, though again, feel free to interrupt us with calling in or making a comment below. And Uhuru, Cherjesi, anything you would like to add before we go into announcements?
Uhuru, no, I don't think so. I think this was a great study. I really appreciate everybody for tuning in, and I want to encourage people to let a friend know about this study. Shout out to Philly for organizing a viewing party of this study tonight, and I want to encourage people to do the same and really build the audience of this Reparations Study Group. And we really want to encourage interaction. Like, we want this to be the place where if somebody that keeps nagging you with a question about the Uhuru movement, and you always feel like you try to answer it, but it's never quite what they want to hear, bring that question to this study. In fact, bring your friend to this study.
Yes.
And more than likely you're answering it just fine. But we can discuss it even more, and possibly help arm you with new ways of being able to articulate and understand different aspects of the theory of African internationalism. So this study is not just a talk fest. It's designed to strengthen our ability to actually organize in the white community to build the movement for reparations to African people. Uhuru.
Uhuru, thank you, Cherjesi. I want to thoroughly unite. We want to have a real discussion and real study together around these very critical issues. So, share on your Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, and also just share with someone in your life, your brother, cousin, mom. We have lots of mom rads and com dads in the Uhuru movement. So bring them into the study, or hold a watch party in your city. So we have thank you, Cherjesi, for those comments and for everything. And Renee asked a question that I'm afraid I did not see. Let me see here. Oh, here we are. I'm sorry, I missed it. All right, we have a question from Renee Nassar, who leads USM in Philadelphia. Uhuru Jesse, can you speak a little bit about the APSP's relationship with the Iranian students in Florida? The Iranian students in Florida.
Sure. Uhuru, Renee. Yes. So, sorry if I keep going out. It's because I'm muting to cough. I have an ongoing cough situation here. So, yes, very good question. And this is actually something that people who want to read more about this topic should get the chairman's book, An Uneasy Equilibrium. In the chapter called The History of the Party, he goes into a lot of detail about the work that the party was involved in the 70s, and the legacy of internationalist solidarity that has always defined the African People's Socialist Party. The African People's Socialist Party has stood with the Palestinian people, the Mexican people, the Syrian people, the Kurdish people, the Roma people, all oppressed peoples, and has had relationships, to various organizations and movements of anti-colonial struggles of oppressed people, including the Iranian students, primarily in Gainesville, Florida. And they were students at the University of Florida, where actually one of the co-founders of the party, Katura Carey, was from Gainesville, Florida. And the chairman, Chairman Amali Chatella, lived there for a while and was based out of there and did a lot of really important work organizing the African People's Socialist Party in Gainesville. And in so doing, they formed relationships with various organizations of Iranian students who were exiled in the United States and who, as was mentioned in the article, were very, very active in organizing against what the Shah was doing to the people of Iran. And, as the chairman pointed out, the brutality of the Shah was such that the protesters in the United States from Iran would have to cover their faces to prevent retaliation by the secret intelligence organization of the Iranian government. But there's quite a story. I don't think we have time to go into it, but there's quite an incredible story in An Uneasy Equilibrium in the history of the party about how, the white nationalist fervor of the white American population was really intense at the time, especially when there was the so-called Iranian hostage crisis, where in the early stages of the Islamic Revolution of 1979, the Iranian revolutionary forces actually seized control of the U.S. Embassy and held 52 U.S. diplomatic staff, a.k.a. CIA spy scum, hostage in the U.S. Embassy in Iran, which was being used, as the chairman points out, as basically the launch pad for U.S. military, actions in that region of the Middle East. So it was pretty powerful that happened, and the backlash, the reaction from the white nationalist population in this country was really intense, to the point where the white nationalist American white people were actually physically assaulting Iranians and also Arabs who are not Iranian. But as the chairman points out, these white nationalists were too stupid to know the difference, so they were just indiscriminately attacking anyone from over there, quote unquote. And in the face of this, really intense climate of white nationalist hostility and violence, the African People's Socialist Party stood strong and defended the Iranian people. And there was a major demonstration of white nationalists in Gainesville where they were using, white nationalist epithets normally reserved for Africans to describe the people of Iran. And they were also saying things like, send the Klan to Iran. And the African People's Socialist Party led a counter demonstration that basically chased these white nationalists. Actually, part of what they did was they started leading a demonstration in opposition to the white nationalists who were attacking the people of Iran. And the white people were all chanting USA, USA, USA. And the African People's Socialist Party basically led them into the African community, and Africans started sticking their heads out of their windows and coming out of their cars and chanting, Africa, Africa, Africa.
Yes.
And at that point, as the chairman says, these white nationalists realized they were not in the quote-unquote USA anymore, and they got the hell out of Dodge. So anyway, it was quite powerful, and it's really just a testament to the African People's Socialist Party. This is who the party is, and this is who we have the honor to be associated with, and to have this principled relationship as members of the Uhuru Solidarity Movement working under the party's leadership. We get the opportunity to take that stand, to be part of that legacy, and, to be genuine internationalists. So, again, Uneasy Equilibrium can tell the story a lot better than I can, and I highly recommend that people get that book and read it. Uhuru.
Yes, get it at burningspearmarketplace.com. That's burningspearmarketplace.com, where you can also get the Burning Spear newspaper. So I'm going to launch into announcements. We are at time, so I'm going to run through. First announcement, the episode 6 of Reparations Study Group. It will be around No Way to the NGA Spy Agency in the African community in St. Louis. You can RSVP at the Facebook link below, and tune in next week, Thursday, 7 p.m. on youtube.com/Uhuru Solidarity and facebook.com/Uhuru Solidarity. And the African People's Socialist Party's first plenary or planning conference of the 7th Congress is going to be here in St. Petersburg, Florida, February 1st through 3rd, so 1st, 2nd, and 3rd, Saturday, Sunday, and Monday. You can register for all 3 days or just 1 day, whatever you are able to do, at apspplenary.org. I encourage you to stay for as much as you can and to hear the chairman and all different organizations within the Uhuru movement, and there will be definitely the chairman will definitely be speaking about Iran and solidarity with the Iranian people. And then there is an MLK Day event and volunteer project at Uhuru Furniture and Collectibles in Philadelphia on Monday, January 20th. You can register at the link there, and I also want to read a little bit about it. So this year on MLK Day, participate in a project that carries on King's legacy, looking for MLK volunteer opportunity that works for the same goals as the movement in the 1960s for Black freedom, economic development, and self-determination. Take part in the Uhuru Furniture Philadelphia's annual MLK Day event and volunteer project, Monday, January 20th from 10 a.m. to 3 p.m. at Uhuru Furniture on 832 North Broad Street at Parrish. The program will start off with historic films and speakers on MLK, Malcolm X, and the struggle in the African community, and the struggle the African community led in the 50s and 60s, African drums featuring Karen Smith, an update on the work of the African People's Education and Defense Funds, or APDF, Black Power Blueprint Project, and more. This will be followed by a group project to distribute literature and get the word out about how everyone can shop, donate, and volunteer at Uhuru Furniture and Collectibles. And there's more info in the comments there. So I encourage everyone in the Philadelphia area to participate in that day of reparations and solidarity with African people, and by extension with Iranian people, at an incredible Black Power institution, Uhuru Furniture. And then we have the Uhuru Solidarity Movement's 2020 National Convention that Chair Jesse mentioned earlier on April 18th and 19th. It's a Saturday and Sunday in St. Louis, Missouri at the beautiful new Uhuru House there. Register at the link below. And Chairman Amali Chattel will be there, Penny Hess of the African People's Solidarity Committee, and of course Jesse Nevel giving the report from the Uhuru Solidarity Movement for this year. So we are at 8:03. And I want to thank everyone who is tuning in. Please continue to share. And thank you so much, Chair Jesse.
Thank you, Jackson, and Kyle, and everyone who tuned in. Uhuru.
Uhuru. Uhuru, everyone. Oops. Sorry. Oh. Uhuru.